It'll be fine though. First let me just make sure all the things are great. Okay, there we go. There's my LinkedIn. Fabulous. Okay, so we got the LinkedIn there, and then we've got this here. Great. Okay, so now we're gonna do the countdown. There you go.
You are a psychologist. I tell you things, you make a list. You've got special powers, though. You make me scared, you make me go. Could it be necessary? Could it be, oh, to let me be? You always know what I'm thinking. Do you remember me? Remember when we're forsaken? It takes to see when I leave it all behind. To let me be. You can
Oh, there we go. Hi, I'm live now. Wow, couldn't hear me there for a minute. Hey, I made a really funny joke about being late on a grant too. It was like, "Hi everybody, I'm late. Oh, it was the last minute grant. I only just found out about it, so I'm 5 minutes late." Uh-oh. All right, let's make sure. No, this is me talking and not having a. Oh, there we go. Hi. Okay, there we go. Love it. Okay, perfect. All right, we did it. We're live. All is well. Hello, hello. Good morning. It's so good to see you. I am going to admit I'm a little under the weather today. Not under the weather like I'm not sick or anything, but Allie and I went to Provincetown, and I don't typically stay up late or party late, but it's Provincetown. We were staying at the hotel where the event was taking place, and so I was up until much later than I ordinarily would have been. So yesterday morning we decided to leave at like 7. So we left like super early. Drove back to see the dogs. They were super happy. And then I was so tired, I fell asleep. And then I like it's one of those sleeps where like you're so exhausted that you just kind of like thud. You're just like, "Oh my god, I feel like I just hit a wall and I can't even function." Hold on, I just realized I want to make sure that I have my Streamlabs chat here, because typically that's how I connect with Kelly, and I wanted to make sure that I could see her. All right, we're gonna move it here. There we go. Where's the chat? I know there's an actual chat window here that like shows me all the chatting. Oh, come on. Literally, it was 2 second here. Here we go. Unlock sources, projector. No, come on. Find some. Ah, there it is. I see the chat. There we go. The chat's there now. Okay, so we're all there. Everything's there. Okay. Um, So, and the other thing I wish I could do is I wish I could pull out the chat so that I could kind of have it over here, whereas one window is over there, but it is what it is. So yeah, so it was a very long, weekend. And, but I had so much fun, And let's see, what else did I had? So I made a list of things that we were going to talk about today, but it was actually super interesting because I kind of changed my mind at the last minute. I let Spirit kind of tell me which direction we're going to be going. And what was really interesting is that, so I have a bunch of like, there's some news stuff that's happening with the NIH. There's, like they just released like a categorical spending of the, like where Congress is kind of putting the money. And so they have like a whole, from 2016 all the way down until like now where the money is going in. And I meant to kind of pull that out into because, it's really interesting. So it's super interesting. So, in my capacity as a consultant, one of the things that I do with investigators a lot is sort of like help them figure out like where to apply for their funding. It's interesting. In the old days, we actually had a lot more time as research administrators because we weren't doing so much administrative work to be able to sit and kind of like really get involved with our investigators. What is your research? What are you doing? It's a lot harder now, I think. So, as a consultant, it's fairly straightforward. But when you're working in an organization that has so many competing priorities, there's constant stuff that you need to do coming at you. It's very difficult to take that kind of time to be able to sit and have these conversations with your investigators, to like really be a partner in terms of a business partner in terms of how we engage with their research and how they engage with us. And what's really interesting is I think that has been to our detriment over the last, say, couple of decades, where, back when I first started, and I hate being like, back when I was first started, but I mean, the truth is it was a different world. And there was at the time, I felt like there was like two schools of thought in terms of research administration. There was I'm the research administrator, compliance police. And so my job is to make sure that I'm catching you in all the things that you're doing wrong, right? And then there's the research administrator as a partner, where we engaged with PIs about their science and about, what it is that you're doing and so on. And a lot of people, I think, still do that, but because they're also trying to stay on top of the administrative paperwork, it can be really overwhelming to be doing both of those things, because that's honestly some of the best parts about doing our job is tell me a little bit more about your research, right? I mean, that's how, not everybody's heard this story, but years ago, I used to get migraines, like just really bad. So they run in my family. My mom got them before she died. My brother got them. My sister gets them. Like, they're just really, really bad. And I reached a point in my life where I was actually getting migraines 28 days out of a month. And the only reason I know this for sure is because I actually entered into a clinical trial about migraines. Anyway, on days that I had migraines, I'd be like sitting like this, and I have Tiger Balm, and there's a look that you get when you have a migraine that's kind of like this. This investigator from like down the hall comes, and he walks into my office, and he goes, "Hey, do you get migraines?" And I was like, "How did you know?" Like, I was, because he literally walks in and just says, do you get migraines? But he says it in like a much more confident way. Like, he kind of already knows the answer. And I'm just sitting there and I have a migraine right now. And I was like, yes, how do you know? So it turns out this is Rami Burstein. Rami Burstein is one of the leaders in migraine study in the world. And he says, I can help you. And I'm like, no one can help me. He's like, no, I can help you. And oh my God, over the course of the next year and a half, I was actually a part of some of his clinical trials, which now are part of accepted practice, because this is that long ago, related to light and related to medication. Like, there's so like, I was just with him for like 2 years, just doing like this, and absolutely now I barely get migraines. Like, I get them like when I'm high stress. I used to get them when I had my period, but like I don't get them the same way as I do now. I typically get them after now. Like, if there's like so the NCURA conference, like I was working my way up towards the speaking, right? And oh my God, there was so much intensity there. After I'm done speaking, my body kind of does this release, and like, oh my God, the migraine that I get after that is beyond, there's nothing like it. But fortunately, I have the medication from that time in my life, which by the way, I take rizatriptan and for 3 ibuprofen, and Dr. Pepper. Oh my God. And Tiger Balm. Let's not forget Tiger Balm. And then like 15 minutes later, good to go. Okay, why is this? Let's bring this back. Look at me. I went ADHD all over my story, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then let me bring you back to where we were talking about, which is, if I have investigators who have studies that could straddle, say, cancer and something else, I'll typically recommend that they apply for cancer, right, if they can, because the NCI gets their own, so they have their own appropriation budget, right? So like all the other orgs except for one, which I can never remember. It begins with an N. I know it's not NIDDK because I would never forget that. But it's like it's an N, whatever. I can't remember what it is. But the N, not NIDDK, gets its own money as well, right? So you've got these two, as opposed to like everyone else having to break up a pie of $1.2 million. That's funny, right? Yeah, no, $1.2 million. Give me a sec. You have one organization that gets the 1.2 billion, right? So now they can afford to spread that across many different grants, whereas like, the National Institute of Aging, for example, only gets like a small portion of the pie of the 1.2 billion for everybody else. So those are like sort of like the things that I like to look at to say, hey, listen, if you're, this is where the money is going right now. If you can straddle it and you can apply for some of these different organizations, think about that, right? What are some of the other ways in which you can apply, um, in which how you can apply for funding? So that's like super exciting. So I love looking at those kinds of things. So anyway, I was going to go through that and make a little chart and whatnot. That didn't happen. No, that didn't. In fact, not many things didn't happen that I was expecting to happen, which is totally fine. But we can definitely talk about these things at a later date. The other thing, which this came up actually during the NIH update at NCURA, which is that the simplified review for grants was actually really interesting. So I'm excited about the simplified scientific review because ultimately, one of the conversations that happened during the NIH update was this, that the Fed has made their announcement in terms of what the OMB assistance for federal financial. Oh my God, and my brain is, like I said, not all there today. So I'm so tired. But they've said this is what we expect you to do. Now the agencies themselves have to get their plan for how they're going to implement, and I believe it's due in a couple of days on the 24th, I think. Their plans are due to OMB to say, okay, this is how we're going to apply what you have set down as sort of like the overarching overview. So I have some videos that I've been putting together. There's a few things that happened that we'll talk about in a minute that are super exciting. I think it just kind of distracted me a little bit from the focus. So as we go over the next several months, we're going to start hearing from these agencies, the DoD and the NIH and the NSF, about how they're going to be implementing some of these new processes and policies. One of the most interesting ones for me, actually, and this may or may not be the most interesting thing in the room, but it's interesting to me, is the other support documents. And it's because, like, over the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, we have seen many different types of other support documents. And as it got more complicated over time, like in the old days, they were very straightforward and simple. And then the NIH ones kind of got to the DoD level of complication where they want to see like every little piece of information. Whereas before they weren't looking for that level of detail, and now they are. So I'm curious to see, like, where are we going to go with this other support? How are all of these federal agencies going to get together now to say, okay, we are collectively deciding that this is what the other support document looks like? Because again, I understand what they're trying to get, the information that they want, why they want it, why it's important. I think the challenge comes with, again, there's a lot of administrative burden in collecting that level of detail for everybody. So I am curious to see how that plays out. For me, like, that's the most interesting thing, is the other support and effort management in general, right? Making that a little bit less burdensome, because the conversation that's been happening, so this happened at FRA, PRA, it happened at Region 1. I run into research administrators in like the weirdest places, like people that I don't know and some people that I do know. I just, wherever, like, we find each other. And, as we're talking, the conversation typically, especially in smaller organizations where they may not necessarily invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in like a system, a software system to manage effort, it can get really complicated managing any effort, salary, and so on. And as for those of us who are doing work with organizations that currently have Workday, right, that in and of itself is its own problem, because and this question came up multiple times, which I think it sends a message about like something like related to the problems that exist out there, which is the question a lot of people have been asking is, okay, is there a way for you in Workday to be able to pull out the effort and salary information that we need to be able to do the reporting? And I would love more than anything, if you use Workday and you have found a way to successfully do this, please let me know, because I have so many people who are asking me this question, but I don't know anybody who's actually successfully done it. I personally have not. And much like everybody else, we found that Workday, it has a challenge in terms of how to how to make it work for grants, because like it's got a lot of really, I think that Workday has a lot of power. I think it has a lot of potential. I think it's really exciting, but not where it's at right now. Like the problem with any great piece of software is that you always have to like there's a trial and error period while you're kind of figuring it out, and it's not usually fun. I just realized my neck is like suddenly it's hurting like a lot. I wonder if it's because of the angle that I'm looking up at the camera at. Like, do I need to be a little bit lower? Okay, so let's oh, um, just so you know, oh shit, are we already? Yeah. For those of you who are having applications that were due between May 18th and May 21st, the deadline for that now is going to be May 22nd. Like, that was something I pulled out. Most of us who have been doing grants for a long time, we know that we typically tend to push the grant one day further. This is for some grants.gov downtime that they have going on. So this is not a result of like Memorial Day or a holiday or whatever. They're actually going, grants.gov is going to be down on Monday. That's today. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Isn't that delightful? Did you just, everybody can see the thumbs down. It's so fun. I just seriously hate that my camera does this. It is like, I know that there's a feature that I can turn off, and you know what? I'm going to like do a search for it right now just so that it ends up here. It's okay. How to turn off the feature on Apple that makes balloons. There we go. That makes balloons. Okay, video reaction. There we go. Okay. Apparently there's like a whole thing. Yeah, how do I turn off the balloons on my iMac? This is not on my iMac. Is that even still a thing? Do iMacs still exist? Does anybody remember when iMacs were a thing? Those were fun. Those were little, we used to call them toilet books. So back in the day when those came out, I was working IT at Emerson College, and oh my, everybody had to have one. And then the problem I remember was that nobody wanted to buy some of the colors. Everybody wanted like the pink or the green or the blue, but nobody wanted like some of the other colors. And so like they had this deal where organizations had to buy like all the packages of 7. So you'd basically, so they could sell like the colors that people weren't buying. Those days. Well, at any rate, I figured out how to turn that off. Okay, so 2 things. First is keep an eye out. Oh my God, so many things. I gotta make a note. All right, 3 things. The first thing is keep an eye out on my LinkedIn where I'm sharing jobs that I'm finding for research administrators. So a lot of research administrators are looking for jobs. A lot of you are looking for staff. I do an analysis sort of like every, week or so. I go through the Res Admin mailing list. I pull out jobs that I think are great and worth applying to. I have a couple of pieces of criteria. I typically do not look at salary, but if it's like super low, like we're looking at under 60,000, I typically will not recommend it, because I think that is, no matter where you live, that is just way too low for even someone with no experience who is expected to like then grow into that space of experience. Like I feel like 50 and 60 is just way too low. So typically you'll find salaries that are higher than that. And then they're all remote or hybrid. I don't typically recommend jobs that are not remote, just because I don't think, like, if you want to go in, right, that's great. Like, each individual person is like, oh my God, I need to go in because I need this socialization or whatever it is. Like, everybody has the thing that they need. I personally do not understand the need for socialization, but I get it. But the job itself doesn't need to be required. So if I don't see any indicator that it's remote, I just don't include it. So remote and salary over than 60, though the truth is, if something has a salary that is higher than that, so if we're looking like 85, which is what I think the baseline for an RA1 should be, I'm going to always highlight that. Or if I know the hiring manager and I'm like, this hiring manager is cool, because here's the thing, right? Let's say you're working in an organization that is your living nightmare, right? Your living nightmare organization, and you're unhappy, you're miserable, everything's in chaos, it is what it is, right? All those things, right? If your manager also is someone who makes you feel oppressed because they are micromanagers, or they're just not good managers, right? Like I've been there. It makes it so much worse, right? So, and for me in that case, it's like, okay, well, you can be in an organization where your manager sucks, or you can be in an organization where your manager is great. You're still going to be dealing with the chaos of having too much paperwork, too many grants, too many things to do, just all that. But at least now you're in an environment where you feel like your manager cares about you. They're paying attention to you in a way that is really about your growth and your development, and while also solving the problems of the organization, as opposed to not those things, and basically making you feel like you're having a heart attack every time you go into work. So, and you know who that is. Here's the thing. If you already know as I am talking, if you are someone who's having the heart attack, or you're like, oh my God, I love my manager. Like, you already know. You don't need me to explain. Me just saying the words is enough. You're like, oh my God, I need to find another job. Like, now. Okay. So, all right. This now, okay. So now we've got a couple more things, and then we're gonna wrap this. Oh, hey, wow, it's 9:24. Okay, so the first thing is this. What was the first thing? Hold on. Oh, right. So I'm part of Ankura Collaborate, and we just did a survey. So I am part of the. I don't like this shadow. Maybe that's the way to do it. Okay. And we just did a survey on artificial intelligence and how research administrators are using artificial intelligence in their day-to-day activities, which is awesome because what I love seeing how people are using it. Now, what's really interesting is that the survey had a couple of there are people who say that their organization is using it or they're excited to use it, but the number of people who are actually using it is much lower than the number of people who are either excited to use it. So which means that you're excited, but you're not using it, right? Or you're excited and your organization has AI, but you're not using it. Or you don't know that you're using it yet, because a lot of times the way that AI is evolving so quickly, it's showing up in the back end of so many of our pieces of software right now that we don't even recognize when AI is now influencing the answers that we're already getting and so on. So you may be engaging with it in a more subtle way, but not something like I'm going to ChatGPT or I'm going to DALL-E or I'm doing something and creating whatever it is that I'm looking for. So this is really exciting. As a group, both the AI committee and the ERA committee are so excited because we were talking about this in the Res Admin list. This is a really great opportunity for us to figure out how we can leverage AI to be able to take over some of the more administrative activities that are rote activities that we're just doing constantly over and over again that is time consuming. So each of these activities is time consuming, and it's important, so it gets done, but it doesn't necessarily need to be done by us, right? It just needs to be done. And I'm not talking about confidential stuff that you don't want to be putting in AI. I'm talking about just writing an email or doing a thing or whatever, right? And so one of the things that I was excited about in the Res Admin mailing list as this conversation got going, because someone asked a question, this wasn't part of the survey, just someone asked a question about it, and then it started this conversation. And there's there's the body of RAs who are really, really against it in terms of more of there's almost a disdain for it, right? Where it's oh my goodness. And then there's the people who are I really think it's super powerful, but I'm terrified of our robot overlords coming in and taking over our souls. Also totally valid. And then there's the, oh my God, I use AI for absolutely everything, right? And I'm just constantly trying to figure out new ways of using it and so on. And I think that there is a healthy caution, right? That definitely needs to be taken with artificial intelligence just in general, because we all saw Terminator. But at the same time, when we were at Ankura Region 1, this question came up in our what the heck was it? Oh, in our session, our panel on the last day about people asking questions, just about research administration. We had Chris Monahan there, we had Stacy Reisman, and we had Syra there, and I was emceeing it. And so basically we were talking, and the question came up about AI, and the question was really about it taking over our jobs or us losing jobs. And the truth of the matter is that's not going to happen. You're absolutely going to have AI that's going to take over a lot of the work that we're doing related to rote activities and stuff that honestly we don't really need to nor want to be spending our time on. But what we'll find is that now we're able to do the things in our job that we really enjoy doing and that requires our expertise. And I've been working on this exercise. So one of the things that I found when I look at job descriptions, because I start to look through all these job descriptions when I'm trying to figure out, okay, hey, let's share these hot jobs, is I'm looking for jobs, right? I'm looking for what are they asking for and what are they saying. And what I found was super interesting because I don't, you've got to be mining through these all the time to see it. But most job descriptions will say something very high level, like manages pre and post award, can do cost transfers, right? And like, those are things that we do. Absolutely, right? But like, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm curious to know from you too, right? Like, how much effort does it really take to do a cost transfer? Like, anybody can do a cost transfer. Here's a form. It's either electronic or it's paper. You punch in the numbers, and that's it. Damn, you filled out the cost transfer. It takes 2 seconds. It's like, actually, it doesn't take 2 seconds. Just putting the paper, finding the paperwork, doing the thing can take 5 to 10 minutes, right? But that's not what we do. That is the culmination of hours of activity that required us to go through, understand what was happening with the salary, where were they during this time, what's happening with the effort. There's so much synthesis of information that goes on every time we do any particular task, that it's easy to make it sound like what we're doing is just, oh, hey, we fill out a form. But what it really is a complex series of activities that are going on in our brain that takes up a lot of time. Now, let's say that you have to fill out 10 cost transfer forms, right? And each one takes 10 minutes. Well, that's 100 minutes right there that just goes into filling out the form itself, right? I'm not even talking about the hours and hours that you're spending on figuring out, oh, this is where the salary goes. And so the work related to the actual operational, like the administrative, putting this in the paper and so on and so forth, those are the things that I think we're going to start seeing more and more automations on, so that it takes up less than, like, that extra 100 minutes we don't need to be spending because it's all clerical work. Our expertise is why we did all of the other work, right? And that's what we really needed to do. At that point, if we can just think our way to being like, here, put that into the spreadsheet and it just shows up in the spreadsheet, great. But it doesn't require a whole lot of our conscious active attention once we've figured out what needs to be done. And so I think that's what's really exciting about AI, is that the ability, and I don't know, like, the thing about this is that I don't know what it's going to become because we're too early on. Oh my God, my nose is itching like nobody's business right now. We're going to hold on a second. It's just like this little itch in my nose, like right here. And it's like, oh my God. Like, it's just like, it's in the weird, like right here. It's like, ah. Like dog fluff getting stuck in your nose. It's the worst. Okay. So anyway, that's my whole spiel on AI. But the point is, though, is like, it's all well and good for me to say this is my opinion. What I'm excited about is that we are talking about what is everyone else's opinion? What is everybody else's experience of it? How are you engaging with it? What are you enjoying? What are you not enjoying? How are you using it? Because that's really the question, is how are we using it as research administrators to deal with some of the more complex issues that it's useful for, right? So, which brings me to my next thing, which I wanted to share with you today, is, one of the things that I'm finding with my clients is that I'm working with a lot of new research administrators right now, like lots of new ones. So one of the things that I started doing is I have like a 30-minute window call that any RA can book with me and just come and we'll talk, right? Whatever it is that you've got going on, let's sit and talk about it, right? And I can connect you with the resource. I can connect you with the job. I can connect whatever it is. Like, I've been doing this long enough to where whatever your challenge is, I can connect you with the person who can solve the problem for you, like, or who can be your guide through it, right? I'm a good connector that way. But what's interesting is like there are some questions that are popping up like over and over and over again, which is like super interesting to me, right? Both with my clients and with people who are like, okay, I'm a new RA and this popped up. Tell me what I need to do for this, right? And a lot of times they're really just looking for an overview. And so I started recording these. I started just recording. I'm like, can I just record this? And so basically I'm recording and I'm like, okay, this is what a just-in-time is. And here, this is what you need to be asking your boss to find out what you need to find out at your organization so that you can fill out a just-in-time, right? Where you're at. Because like there's like an overview of what is a just-in-time, what is another support, what is an RPPR, right? Beyond what I mean, what we typically see in, because there's there are more websites out there that has a list of what an RPPR is and what goes into it than anyone could possibly count. Like there's the tactical information is a flood. What's missing, and this is the question that keeps coming up, is how does this fit into the bigger picture conversation about grants management? Why do I need to know this? Like, I understand that I'm doing the paperwork, and that's great, and I can go find it, and I can check these boxes off, but I don't understand why I'm doing it, and I don't understand how to make my life easier with it. I don't like, so there's a lot of contextual information that is getting asked, and so I think that's like super fascinating. And whereas I love having these little, I exist to create content. Anyone who knows me knows that I can create content like nobody's business. Like, oh my God, that is a gift within me. However, I would recommend that if you are an organization that has a lot of new people starting at once, right? Or you have like just a new group of RAs who are already in there right now and maybe who aren't asking you these questions, right? Because like, here's the thing. A lot of times what's happening is that people are asking me because they don't know who to ask. They're asking me because they are worried about bothering their manager, which by the way is one of the things that I say is, listen, like this is why they're here, right? 3, they don't actually feel safe with their managers, right? So they do not feel like if they ask this question of their manager that they will be responded to in a way that would encourage their growth as opposed to make them feel terrible about themselves, right? And so there's many reasons why people wouldn't ask. And honestly, to me, it doesn't matter why, right? As long as they're asking the question, I don't care where they're getting the information from, as long as it's not from somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. However, I think that if you're in an organization, which so many people are right now, where you're bringing on a large group of people, either through you're like, okay, here's 5 new people that we just hired and none of them have any research administrative experience, or they have a limited research administrative experience. What I would recommend, rather than having them use like these videos like, oh, here, this is what this is, and here, this is what this is, going through a program like the Stack Education Program, which is, and I don't get paid for this. This is not me plugging it so that I can get some sort of a cut. This is me plugging it because I think it's a really good program. Basically, it's like an onboarding / pipeline program for new research administrators to give them all of the context that they need. So my sister Syra teaches it. We've worked together on the curriculum for it. Like, I'm very, very passionate about it. And in some cases, they actually have grants and stuff, so where the organizations don't even necessarily need to pay for their staff to go through it. We just need like, oh, here's 5 people we can put through it. We'll do it through the grant. Bam, there you go. They come out, they're graduated. Now they have all this information. I think that having these videos is great. Having people reach out to me is great. Like, all of those things are great. And I want to be that support. But at the same time, I think that there is a stronger case to be made for utilizing a program like the Stack Education Program, where you can put people through something that you know they're being guided through the whole process, to where when they come out of it, there is a baseline understanding of research administration that you know that they'll have, and then you can build on that. As opposed to, I think, the challenge for all of us who have been hiring people for years and years and years is, one, identifying what is somebody's baseline knowledge, right? And like, if you hire somebody who has like 10, 15 years of experience, you know that their baseline knowledge is pretty good, and that there's not a lot you're going to need to teach them in terms of, this is the basics of research administration, what a just-in-time is, how to do an RPPR, things like that. Like, what they're really going to be needing to know is, how do I do this at this organization? Where do I go to find this information? And that kind of thing. But those kind of research administrators are getting harder and harder to find as we all age into the space where we're retiring. Or honestly, a lot of people are just deciding they don't want to deal with the pressure anymore, because they remember when they got to be partners with their investigators in their research, and now it just feels like a lot of paperwork all the time. So I think that as we move into this like new phase where we're trying to fill giant amounts of vacancies at one time, taking the burden off of the hiring manager and the senior RA for whatever the portfolio is, which again is a giant burden. Because there was an organization that I was working with a few years ago, and this was early on in like where we started to like see, that the tsunami was sort of like starting to pile up, and they'd been covering for some portfolios because they had lost, and they kept hiring somebody into the staff, but it was like the drummer of Spinal Tap. My God, like this, somebody would come and 3 months later they'd be gone, and then 3 months later they'd be gone, right? So like that's a lot of burden where basically you're like bringing people on, you're training them, you think, oh, I'm going to be able to get this portfolio off my plate soon, and then they're like, peace out, we're going. Okay, great, we'll start again, right? So this goes on for a little bit. And the problem that was happening was that this person, like, you're going to make a decision. When you've got that much work, you have to decide, okay, what am I not going to do? Because you can't do everything. And so the thing that you typically, some people will choose to not work on whatever their typical portfolio is. They can keep this other one floating. Some will try to keep them both going. But as the time passed, that other portfolio got more and more complicated because even though if it was a starter, it was like a fairly starter portfolio to begin with. By the time you get 2 years into it, of that many people having their fingers in it, it starts to get messy, right? And then now bringing in a new RA, you're asking so much of that RA to be able to not just take over like a nice clean portfolio, but now here you don't know much about research administration, but you need to figure out what happened with all of these things for the last 2 years. And I think that it creates, like for me anyway, because back in the early aughts when my migraines were at their worst, I would fall behind because I would get these migraines and I couldn't really work on things and whatnot. And then like my self-esteem took like a giant toll, right? Like, because now I was a good RA before, and now somehow I was making all these mistakes, and so in the best of circumstances with somebody with as much experience as I had already, even back then, right? You're left feeling less than because you're just so overwhelmed. So in order to not burn through these new research administrators, giving them that strong foundation in a program like STAC is a really strong thing. So I feel like if you have a pipeline program already in your organization, or you have an educational program that you already put people through for research administration, that is great. That's fabulous. Do that, right? Do that and look in, but if you don't, reach out. I can connect you with STAC. You can figure something out and like be like, hey, we're bringing in 5 new people. Let's run all these 5 people through this program so that when they come out of it, we know that, okay, this is the baseline information that they'll have. And the great part is that CSIRA teaches it. So, you already know what kind of baseline information they're going to have because you know how CSIRA teaches. And if you don't know how CSIRA teaches, then you absolutely must attend something that CSIRA has done. This is a shameless plug for my sister, but she really is that good. She taught me everything that I know. She's my mentor. And it's funny. She's so much younger than me, 3 years. But at the same time, she is my research administrative mentor, for sure. Oh my God, I don't know how this happens. I always think I'm going to end early, and then we're sitting here at 9:42, and we're at the end. Okay. So I want to leave you with this, and this is actually the most exciting thing, which obviously I saved till last, so it's like, I asked a question in the Res Admin mailing list because I'm writing an article for NCURA magazine on the self-care. It's for the one in August, and I asked a question about boundaries, and I honestly did not expect to get as much incredible response. Like, honestly, like, in your wildest dreams, you could not expect to get that good of a response from people. I am blown away by how great that is. So thank you to everyone who contributed. But there were a couple things that were very telling. The first is that you had groups of people who were, I'm just putting my information out here on the Res Admin mailing list and just saying, this is what I do. Right? And outlining, these are my boundaries, this is how I deal with things, and so on. There was an equally large number of people who emailed me privately to say that they did not feel safe putting something in the Res Admin mailing list because their managers were in there and they didn't want their managers to know that this is how they were setting their boundaries, because their managers' expectations would require them to push these boundaries. And I'll give you an example, and this is an example for me. I routinely, and this is something that a lot of people do, I can't, as an efficiency expert, the fact that so many people do this was like awesome. So a lot of people put breaks in their schedule where they call it, I call it flow time, they call it deep dive time, some people call it working time, but everybody has a name for it. But what it is 90 minutes to 2 hours where they block off time on their calendar that it looks like they're busy so that they can work on things that require flow, which is, if you watch the most recent episode of Commitment to Clock Out that is going to be coming up today or this week is all about flow. So they talk all about how they get their flow. I had flow time on my calendar I've had it for many years, because I started working on efficiency as a system for business owners and research administrators and CEOs back, say, about 5 years ago. So I've been doing it from before that, right? And I started working at this organization, and my boss said, "Why do you always look like you're so busy?" I said, "I'm not busy. I have things that you've assigned for me to do, and they require deep work time, and I can't do those things if I don't have protected time on my calendar to be able to focus." And she wanted two things. She wanted to, one, see my calendar so that she could see what I had on my calendar each day, so she would have that level of transparency. And two, she wanted me to take off the flow time, because she said she needed to be able to get a scheduled time with me whenever she needed. And she didn't want it to look like I was so booked. I said no to both of those things. I said, "Nope, you're not getting in to see my calendar. I have nothing to hide, but there's no need for you to have that level of visibility. I don't want you coming in and saying, well, why do you have this and why do you have this? I don't want our conversations to become basically a referendum against what I have on my calendar each day. Like, as the level that I'm at, the expectation is that I would be able to manage my own calendar. And if you feel that I'm not producing enough, then that's a different conversation." It wasn't that I wasn't producing. It was just that she wanted to have that visibility in my calendar. And then the second thing that she wanted was for me to take off the flow time. Again, I said no to that too. Because there are activities that require flow. And if you don't have them, then the question that you ask, well, when do you expect me to be able to do these things then, right? If you're going to be putting meetings on my calendar whenever I turn around, then when do you want me to do this work that is deep flow time? And the answer is typically going to be, well, this is your job, figure it out. And what they're really saying is that you need to work late or come in early or do more of these things so that you can get this deep flow time work done when there's nobody in the office. So basically saying you need to work more hours to be able to get this done. I was incredibly excited by how many people have set these boundaries for themselves exactly the same as me, which is, no, you can't look at my calendar. No, I'm not removing my flow time. And yeah, some things need different, I acknowledge that things that require different types of work to do things. I think the thing that I guess the word I'm really frightened, but it's not really frightened. It frightens me because I don't like feeling that there's people who are living under this kind of feeling at work. But like the thing that I felt made me feel sorrow, I guess, is how many people have bosses who subscribe to the philosophy of flow time is a waste of time. Do not block off your time. And so they feel like they have to hide this from their bosses, right? Like I did. I think that's usually a really good sign where it's time to go somewhere else, right? Generally speaking, because that's usually a symptom of a bigger issue, right? It's not just about the calendar. The calendar is just one thing in a long line of other things. So that's usually like a good red flag. But I think that, when the article comes out, I think it'd be really, really exciting. I've anonymized everybody because, again, I don't necessarily remember who said what. I might reach out to a couple people to say, hey, listen, can I quote you in here because this is some really good shit. And they posted it publicly, so it's like they might not mind. But look out for that. But in the meantime, I actually don't want to wait until August to get you the amount of incredible information provided by our fellow research administrators, mind blowing. Like, I could not have even hoped for more. Like, so good. I'm so grateful, right? Because, like, again, I can come up with only so much, and then I kind of hit a wall, and then I get frustrated, and then I'm like, ugh, right? Nothing is greater to me than when somebody reaches out and is like, here's a list of all the things I do, and I'm like, oh my God, I love you so much right now. And I like to be able to give credit where credit is due, right? And so, because again, otherwise it looks like I created all this shit, and that I mean, I can create shit, and that's great. I can create content. I'm really good at that. That's all fabulous. But this is whatever it is that we're doing in research administration, it's collective. We're doing it all together. And so if you ever do send me something and you're like, oh, hey, yeah, you're free to use this, go ahead and use my name, let me know, because I always want people to know who the heroes in our life are, so that also I can send them to you, right? Because then it's like, oh, hey, Jackie knows this. Oh, hey, Aisha knows that, right? It's a great way to do it. My poor wife is just sneezing out there. I'm wondering if she's okay. Okay. Here we are at the end of our day. More and more exciting things to come. I feel like Encura and has just, it has lit a fire under me for the next year or so. So there's lots of fun things that are going to be coming up on my YouTube channel, Manessa.tv. I'm going to be moving a little bit away from LinkedIn and moving into something that allows me to have more control over what I publish, because I'm going to start publishing a lot more information. And LinkedIn is more of a social space. It's not really meant for like the level of posting that I do and the kind of information that I want to share. It's just not meant for that. So keep an eye out for all of the incredible things that are coming in the future. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. Summer is here. It's going to be a nice warm day in New England. So I am feeling, considering the fact that I woke up literally at 8:20, going live at 9, okay? That doesn't usually happen. Usually I'm up at like 6 and I have hours to prepare. Whew, I just fell asleep and I was like, I'm out. And I just woke up and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. Oh my God. All right, we're going to go now. We're going to go now with the balloons right in front of my face. It has been so good to hang out with you. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you not next Monday, but I will see you the following Monday on June, whatever that June day is, and will be a little bit less off the cuff, because I will have slept. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and now let me find this. Okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do this. There we go. Yeah, okay, there we go.